The rain in Chicago didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Inside the emergency department of St. Jude's Medical Center, the atmosphere was a pressurized vessel of misery and fluorescent light. It was 2:45 a.m., the graveyard hour, where the city's broken and forgotten washed up on the shores of the triage desk. Elena Rosales rubbed her eyes, smearing a drop of blood, not hers, across her cheekbone. At 29, Elena was already a veteran of the trauma wars. She wasn't the kind of nurse who held your hand and whispered sweet nothings. She was the kind who cracked your chest open to massage your heart while shouting at residents to clear the line. She was efficiency personified, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a burning, quiet rage against the inequities of the system. That rage was about to boil over. "Get him out, Rosales," a voice drawled from the nurse's station. Elena stiffened. She didn't have to turn around to know it was Dr. Marcus Vance, the newly appointed chief of emergency medicine. Vance was a man who looked more like a hedge fund manager than a healer. Silk tie, perfectly coiffed silver hair, and a soul comprised entirely of ambition and spreadsheet metrics. "The patient in Bay 1 is unstable, doctor," Elena said, her voice tight but controlled. She stood between the gurney and the hallway. "Core temp is 96. Systolic is hovering at 90. He's postictal and drifting in and out of consciousness." Vance didn't even look up from his tablet. "Bay 1 is a VIP suite. It has the privacy partition and the upgraded monitoring array. I have the deputy mayor's nephew coming in 5 minutes. Alcohol poisoning at a frat mixer. His father is a donor. A platinum donor." Elena looked back at the man in the bed. They had logged him as John Doe. He was a mountain of a man, perhaps 6'4", but wasted away. His beard was a thicket of matted hair. His clothes were layers of grease-stained flannel and torn canvas that smelled of diesel and wet dog. To the casual observer, he was just another statistic, a homeless junkie who had passed out in a gutter. "You want to move a critical trauma patient to the hallway for a drunk college kid?" Elena asked, the incredulity seeping into her tone. Vance finally looked up, his eyes cold and dead behind rimless glasses. "I want to move a non-paying, resource-draining vagrant to the waiting room so that a patient who funds your paycheck can be treated with dignity." Security. 2 burly guards, Miller and Davis, stepped forward, looking apologetic but obedient. "He's not trash, Marcus," Elena snapped, dropping the honorific. "He's human. He is a waste of space," Vance sneered, walking over to the gurney. He wrinkled his nose at the smell of old rain and infection. "Look at him, probably overdosed on fentanyl. He's clogging up my ER. Get him out. Put him in a wheelchair by the vending machines. If he wakes up, kick him to the street." Vance turned his back, dismissing the life on the bed as a clerical error. But Elena saw what Vance didn't. She had spent her childhood in a neighborhood full of veterans and roughnecks. She knew the difference between the trembles of withdrawal and the tremors of neurological shock. As she reached to unhook the monitor, her hand brushed the patient's forearm. Beneath the layers of grime, the skin wasn't soft. It was corded steel, and there were scars, not the track marks of a user, but the jagged, ugly keloids of shrapnel. Circular burns that looked like bullet entry wounds healed over by time and grit. And then she saw the hands. The right hand was twitching, not randomly but rhythmically. Tap, 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 tap. It wasn't a seizure. It was a pattern. Elena froze. She looked at the man's face. His eyes were squeezed shut, sweat beading on his forehead despite the hypothermia. He was lucid. He was listening. "Wait," Elena commanded, holding up a hand to stop the security guards. "Rosales, do you want to be fired tonight?" Vance barked from the doorway. "I need to clean him up before transfer." Elena lied smoothly, her heart hammering against her ribs. "He's covered in fluids. If we move him to the lobby like this, it's a biohazard risk. The other patients will complain. The board hates complaints." She spoke Vance's language. Liability. Vance checked his Rolex. "You have 10 minutes. Then he goes. Dead or alive." He spun on his heel and left to greet the VIP. Elena yanked the privacy curtain shut with a metallic swoosh. She locked the wheels of the gurney and leaned close to the man's ear. "I know you can hear me," she whispered, her voice low and fierce. "And I know you're not a junkie. So stop playing possum before I stick you with a catheter just for spite." The man's eyes snapped open. They weren't the hazy eyes of an addict. They were gray, storm cloud gray, and terrifyingly clear. They scanned the room, the exits, and Elena's face in a fraction of a second. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. The strength was shocking, enough to crush bone if he wanted to. "Hostels?" he rasped. His voice sounded like it had been gargling broken glass. "Just an asshole doctor," Elena whispered, not pulling away. "Who are you?" He tried to sit up but groaned, clutching his side. "The scans? Did they run scans?" "No. We haven't even done blood work." "Good." He exhaled, his head falling back. "Listen to me carefully, nurse. My name is Lucas. You need to verify that name nowhere. Do not put me in the system. You're already in as John Doe. Keep it that way." He squeezed her wrist, his eyes pleading. "I have something inside me. Not drugs. Intel. If they find it, everyone in this room dies." Elena stared at him. "Who is they?" "The people who did this." Lucas gestured to a heavily bandaged wound on his thigh, which Elena had assumed was an abscess. "I need a scalpel. And I need a secure line." "You need a psychiatrist," Elena countered, though her gut told her otherwise. "Check the hallway," Lucas hissed. Two men. Black raincoats. Earpieces. They don't walk like cops. They walk like predators. Elena hesitated, then stepped to the edge of the curtain. She peeked out. The ER doors slid open. A gust of wind blew rain into the vestibule. Two men entered. They weren't police. They weren't family. They wore expensive, dark tactical rain gear. They moved with a synchronized fluidity that was unnatural. One was tall and gaunt, with skin like parchment. The other was broad, with a shaved head. They didn't go to the triage nurse. They went straight to the directory, scanning the room. The gaunt one made eye contact with Dr. Vance. Vance nodded nervously and pointed, directly at Bay 1. Elena felt a chill slide down her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She pulled her head back. "Okay," she breathed, turning to Lucas. "I believe you." Lucas tried to sit up, sweat pouring off him. "We need to move. Now." "You can't walk," Elena said, her mind racing. She was a trauma nurse. Chaos was her baseline. "Vance is coming with them. They're going to take you." "If they take me," Lucas said, reaching into his boot and pulling out a small, jagged piece of metal. A shiv made from a spoon handle. "I won't make it to the parking lot." Elena looked at the makeshift weapon, then at the monitors. "Screw Vance," she muttered. She kicked the brake off the gurney. "Hold on, soldier. We're going for a ride." Elena didn't push him toward the exit. That was blocked. She pushed him deeper into the hospital. "Hey!" Vance's voice echoed across the trauma bay. "Rosales, what the hell are you doing?" "Patient is seizing," Elena shouted back, lying through her teeth. "I need the crash cart in imaging. Airway is compromised." It was the perfect lie. A code blue scenario froze everyone. People stepped back. The confusion bought her 5 seconds. She rammed the gurney through the double doors marked diagnostic imaging. Authorized personnel only. She swiped her badge. The maglock clicked, and she shoved the bed through, slamming the door behind her just as the gaunt man reached the glass. Through the reinforced window, she saw the man simply stare at her. He didn't pound on the door. He didn't yell. He just pulled a suppressed pistol from his coat and shot the electronic lock. Thwip, thwip, sparks showered down. The lock disengaged. "Go!" Lucas roared, rolling off the gurney. He hit the floor hard but scrambled up, adrenaline overriding the pain. "MRI suite," Elena commanded, grabbing his arm and hauling him down the corridor. "It's the only room with a heavy door." They sprinted, or rather, Elena sprinted and half-carried the limping giant into MRI room 2. The massive donut-shaped magnet hummed in the center of the room. "Lock it!" Lucas yelled. Elena slammed the heavy, copper-shielded door and threw the deadbolt. It was designed to block radio waves, not bullets, but it was thick steel. "They're coming," Lucas wheezed, leaning against the wall. He looked at his thigh. "I need it out. Now." "What is it?" Elena demanded, grabbing a trauma kit from the wall. "MicroSD. Encrypted. Evidence of a Black Ops sale. Senator Blackwood. He's selling prototype drone tech to insurgents. My team intercepted it. They killed everyone. I'm the only one left." Elena's hands shook as she ripped open a sterile pack. "Senator Blackwood? The defense contractor guy running for governor." "The very same." The door handle jiggled. Then, a heavy thud. They were ramming it. "Cut!" Lucas ordered, pointing to the stitched wound on his leg. Elena didn't hesitate. She sliced the sutures. Lucas didn't flinch, though his jaw muscles bunched tight enough to crack teeth. Elena dug in with forceps. There, buried deep in the muscle fascia, was a tiny, blood-slicked chip wrapped in plastic. "Got it," she said, holding it up. "Keep it," Lucas gasped. "If I go down, you get that to the FBI. Specifically Agent Miller in the Cyber Division." "Nobody is going down," Elena said, looking around the room. "We're trapped, Lucas. There's no other exit." The door hinges groaned. The men outside were using a battering ram or a sledgehammer. Lucas looked at the MRI machine. Then he looked at the metal fire extinguisher on the wall. Then at the door. A grim smile touched his lips. "Is that magnet on?" "It's always on," Elena said. "It's a 3 Tesla Supersting magnet. It attracts ferromagnetic metal with a force of—" She stopped. She understood. "Help me move the table," Lucas said. They pushed the patient table away from the center. "When that door opens," Lucas said, his voice deadly calm, "get behind the shielding wall." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to introduce them to physics." The door buckled. One hinge snapped. Lucas grabbed a metal oxygen tank from the corner, one that shouldn't have been in the MRI room but had been left by a careless orderly. He held it with his good arm, standing directly in line with the bore of the magnet, but back near the door. "Get down." Elena dove behind the technician's control console wall. The door flew open. The broad, bald mercenary stepped in, leveling a submachine gun. He saw Lucas standing there, unarmed. "End of the line, Ghost," the mercenary growled. Lucas dropped the oxygen tank. "Catch," Lucas said. The mercenary frowned. The 3 Tesla magnetic field grabbed the steel oxygen tank. It accelerated from 0 to 60 miles per hour in a fraction of a second, flying straight toward the magnetic bore. The mercenary was standing in the path. The tank hit him in the chest with the force of a cannonball, lifting him off his feet and pinning him against the mouth of the machine with a sickening crunch. His submachine gun was ripped from his hands, clattering into the magnet's opening. The mercenary screamed, a high, wet sound, as the magnetic force crushed his ribcage against the tank. The gaunt man behind him, realizing what was happening, tried to raise his pistol. The gun was yanked from his grip, flying through the air and joining the debris ball in the center of the machine. "Run!" Lucas grabbed Elena's hand. They bolted past the pinned, screaming mercenary, shoving the gaunt man aside while he was still grappling with the magnetic pull on his belt buckle. They were out in the hallway. "That," Elena panted, "voids the warranty." "Bill me," Lucas grunted. The hospital was now a hunting ground. Code Silver. Code Silver. Active shooter in diagnostic imaging. The PA system blared. "Vance?" Lucas spat as they ducked into a stairwell. "He's calling it in as us being the shooters. He's turning the police against us." "We need to get to the roof," Elena said. "The helipad. My phone has no signal in here, but up there." "No," Lucas stopped her. He was leaning heavily on the railing, his face gray. "I can't make 20 floors. The poison. Poison. Before I escaped the safe house, they darted me. Slow-acting neurotoxin. My heart rate is dropping. I have maybe 30 minutes before cardiac arrest." Elena grabbed his wrist. His pulse was thready and slow. "Bradycardia. I need atropine, she said. And epinephrine. Now. We can't go back to the ER. We don't have to, Elena said, her eyes narrowing. We're going to the basement. The morgue. The morgue. They keep a crash cart there for the pathologists in case they have a heart attack seeing a ghost. Plus, it connects to the old utility tunnels. They descended. The basement was a labyrinth of steam pipes and dripping concrete. It smelled of formaldehyde and decay. They burst into the prep room. Elena raided the crash cart. She didn't bother with IVs. She jammed the atropine auto-injector straight into Lucas's thigh. Gah! He roared. Suck it up, tough guy, she said, prepping the AP. The drugs hit his system. His pupils dilated. The color rushed back into his face. He took a deep, shuddering breath. Better. Like I drank a pot of coffee made of lightning. He nodded. He checked the magazine of a pistol he had swiped from the gaunt man during the scuffle. 7 rounds. 2 hostiles down. But Blackwood will have a backup team. Why you? Elena asked, applying a fresh pressure bandage to his leg. Why didn't you just go to the cops? Lucas looked at her, his expression softening for the first time. I'm Delta, Elena. The unit. We don't exist. If I go to the cops, Blackwood makes a phone call, and I disappear into a military prison for treason. I needed to upload the data to the public. To the news. Once it's out, they can't touch me. So we just need a signal. Yes, but the basement is a Faraday cage. Concrete and steel. Suddenly the lights died. Pitch blackness. They cut the power, Lucas whispered. Emergency generators will kick in 10 seconds, Elena whispered back. In those 10 seconds, they will be moving. Do you know these tunnels? I used to smoke down here when I was an intern, Elena admitted. There's a construction elevator on the north face. They're renovating the psych wing. It goes straight to the roof. The red emergency lights flickered on, bathing the room in a blood-colored glow. Lead the way, nurse, Lucas said. And Elena? Yeah, you're pretty good at this. My dad was a firefighter, she said, opening a heavy steel door. He taught me that panic is the only thing that actually kills you. They moved through the utility tunnels, wading through knee-deep water where a pipe had burst. They reached the base of the construction elevator, an external cage lift clinging to the side of the 30-story building like a metal parasite. But someone was waiting. Dr. Vance stood by the controls, flanked by 2 more mercenaries holding assault rifles. I knew you'd come this way, Vance said, his voice amplified by the acoustics of the tunnel. Rat always scurries to the sewer. Elena stepped forward, shielding Lucas. Marcus, you can't do this. This is murder. High treason. Vance laughed. A hollow, nervous sound. It's retirement, Rosales. Senator Blackwood is offering $5 million for that chip. Do you know how much a hospital administrator makes? Not enough to deal with your whining. He pointed at Lucas. Kill him. Keep the girl. She needs to sign the death certificate. Get down. Lucas shoved Elena behind a concrete pillar just as the mercenaries opened fire. Bullets chipped away the concrete, sending dust and shrapnel flying. Lucas returned fire. Pop, pop. 2 controlled shots. One mercenary took a round to the shoulder and spun back. But they were pinned. I'm out of ammo. Lucas checked the gun. 1 round left. Vance is by the hydraulic controls, Elena whispered, peering around the edge. So? That pipe above him. It's the steam main for the laundry. Lucas looked up. He smiled. You're wicked, Rosales. Do it. Lucas leaned out, took a breath and fired his last shot. He didn't aim for the men. He aimed for the rusted valve wheeled directly above Dr. Vance's head. Clang. The valve shattered. A jet of superheated steam, pressurized to 100 psi, blasted downward. Vance screamed. It was a sound that would haunt Elena's nightmares, high and shrill. The white cloud engulfed him and the remaining standing mercenary. They dropped their weapons, clawing at their faces, blinded and boiling. Go! 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 Elena and Lucas sprinted through the steam cloud. Elena kicked the rifle away from the writhing mercenary. Lucas grabbed Vance by the collar of his ruined suit and threw him aside. They jumped into the construction elevator. Elena slammed the gate and hit the up lever. The motor groaned, and the cage jerked upward, rising out of the tunnel and into the stormy Chicago night. Below them, the remaining mercenaries were recovering, firing up at the cage. Bullets pinged off the metal floor. "We're sitting ducks," Elena yelled over the wind. "Just keep it moving." They rose past the 10th floor, the 15th, the 20th. The wind whipped rain into the cage, soaking them to the bone. The city lights spread out below them, indifferent to their struggle. At the 25th floor, the elevator shuddered and stopped. "They cut the power to the lift," Lucas cursed. "We have to climb." Elena pointed to the service ladder on the side of the scaffolding. "In this wind. Unless you can fly, ghost." They climbed. 5 stories. In a gale. With Lucas's leg bleeding through the bandage and the neurotoxin creeping back into his system. Elena stayed below him, literally pushing him up when his strength failed. "Don't you quit on me, John Doe," she screamed over the thunder. "I didn't ruin my scrubs for nothing." They rolled over the parapet onto the roof. The helipad was a slick sheet of concrete in the rain. Lucas collapsed against the HVAC unit. He fumbled for the microSD chip. "Phone? Need a phone." Elena pulled out her cell. "I have 2 bars." She jammed the chip into the adapter dongle attached to her keychain. She was a tech nerd, thank God, and plugged it into her phone. The roof access door banged open. The cleaner, the gaunt man from the MRI room, stepped out. He looked like a nightmare. One arm hung uselessly at his side, broken by the escape. In his other hand he held a combat knife. He had lost his gun in the magnet. He didn't run. He walked, the walk of a man who enjoys the end. "Give it to me," he whispered, his voice carrying over the wind. Lucas tried to stand, but his legs gave out. The toxin had paralyzed him. Elena stood up. She picked up a heavy pipe wrench left by a maintenance crew. "Get away from him," she screamed. The cleaner laughed. "You're just a nurse, darling. Go back to your bedpans." He lunged. He was fast. Too fast. He knocked the wrench from Elena's hand and backhanded her. She flew across the wet concrete, sliding toward the edge of the roof. She scrambled to her feet, tasting blood. The cleaner stood over Lucas, raising the knife. "No!" Elena didn't think. She didn't calculate. She just acted. She reached into her pocket. She pulled out the epinephrine syringe, the second one she had grabbed. She sprinted. The cleaner heard her and turned, slashing with the knife. The blade cut her arm, a shallow slice, but she didn't stop. She tackled him. Not a football tackle. A desperate, flailing collision. She jammed the needle into his neck, right into the jugular vein, and depressed the plunger. A massive overdose of adrenaline straight to the brain. The cleaner's eyes bulged. His heart rate spiked to 250 beats per minute instantly. He gagged, clutching his throat, his body seizing as his brain short-circuited from the chemical surge. He stumbled back, dizzily, his heels catching the edge of the helipad drainage gutter. He tipped. There was no scream, just a silent fall into the abyss of the city. Elena fell to her knees, gasping. Her phone chirped. Suddenly, the sky exploded with light. Not lightning. Searchlights. 3 black helicopters rose from below the roofline, surrounding the building. "Drop the weapon." Down on the ground. Men in black gear rappelled from the choppers, landing with heavy thuds. Elena raised her hands, terrified. But they didn't aim at her. They formed a perimeter around Lucas. One of the soldiers knelt beside Lucas. "Commander, we got the signal. The file is everywhere. CNN, BBC, The Times. It's over." Lucas looked up, his eyes glassy. He pointed a shaking finger at Elena. She's the one." Then he passed out. 6 months later. The sun was shining on St. Jude's. Elena Rosales walked through the automatic doors. She wore a tailored suit, not scrubs. The ID badge on her chest read Director of Nursing Operations. The ER was humming, but it was different. Dr. Vance was gone, currently awaiting trial for conspiracy, attempted murder, and fraud. The new administration, terrified of the bad press, had given Elena carte blanche to fix the department. "Morning, Elena," the triage nurse smiled. "Bay 4 is clear." "Keep it clear for incoming trauma," Elena said. She walked to the waiting room. It was clean. Everyone was being triaged by severity, not wallet size. A commotion at the entrance caught her eye. A man walked in. He didn't look like a vagrant this time. He wore a crisp navy dress uniform, the chest heavy with ribbons. The trident pin, the insignia of the SEALs, gleamed in the sunlight. But it was the insignia of the Delta Force, the distinct unit patch, that made the security guards straighten up. He walked with a cane, favoring his left leg, but he moved with power. The hospital fell silent. He walked straight up to Elena. "Major Thorne," Elena smiled, crossing her arms. "You clean up nice." "You too, Director." Lucas Ghost Thorne grinned. The beard was trimmed, the grime gone. He looked 10 years younger and devastatingly handsome. "I came to pay a bill," Lucas said, his voice loud enough for the gawking interns to hear. "You had insurance," Elena teased. "Not that bill." Lucas turned to the room. 6 months ago, this hospital tried to throw me in the garbage. They looked at a soldier and saw trash." He paused, his gaze landing on the spot where Dr. Vance used to stand. "But one person saw a human being. One person stood between me and a death squad." He turned back to Elena and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "The president wanted to give you a medal," Lucas said softly. "But I told him you'd probably just use the pin to pop an abscess." Elena laughed, blinking back tears. "You know me too well. So I got you this instead." He opened the box. Inside was a vintage silver brooch, a caduceus intertwined with a sword. "It belonged to the first battle nurse in my unit's history," Lucas said. "It means warrior healer." He pinned it to her lapel. "Thank you, Elena," he whispered, leaning in, "for saving my life." "Just doing my job, Major," she whispered back. "No." Lucas stepped back, saluting her crisp and slow. "You didn't just do your job. You led the way." As he turned to leave, the ER erupted in applause. Not polite clapping, but a roar of respect from patients, doctors, and nurses alike. Elena touched the silver pin. She looked at the busy trauma bay, her battlefield. She wasn't just a nurse. She was the line in the sand, and she would never retreat.